Good morning, hockey fans. This is Stephen Heisler with HeisHockey.com and the Victorious Hockey Company with today's Junior Hockey Morning Show. Sunny and 50 degrees here in Orlando, Florida. A little chilly for me. I think I'm getting soft in my old age. Today is December 19th, 2022. And we are on the World Sports Broadcasting Network, Facebook, Twitter, and hopefully in your home somewhere. Was an interesting weekend. We do have Eric Ballard trying to jump in now. Might be some technical issues there. But let's run down some scores from yesterday. Last night, Amarillo needed overtime to get past El Paso at home. Today, the Philadelphia Rebels visit Danbury this afternoon. There's a North American 3 Hockey League showcase going on in Blaine, Minnesota. We'll run down those scores real quick. From yesterday, Butte beat Louisiana 3-2. Peoria over Long Beach 3-2 in overtime. New Mexico 1-0 over New Jersey. Wilmer Warhawks 10-1 over the El Paso Rhinos. Oregon Tradesmen 3-1 over Helena. Milwaukee beat Danbury 6-3. Atlanta over Yellowstone 4-3. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Stephen.
Bozeman beat Bay State 11-2. Alexandria 7-2 over the Brahmins. Generals 4-3 over Gillette. Great Falls 3-2 over Wausau Cyclones. Sheridan Hawks got a win yesterday, 6-4 over Mason City. St. Louis beat Badland 7-2. The Roadrunners, Mike Beavis' team, overtakes Granite City 4-3. Minnesota Loons 6, Austin Ice Bats 1. Rochester 1-0 over the Sea Captains, and New Ulm beat Mid-City Stars 10-0. Today's games: Wausau and Atlanta, Peoria and Louisiana, Butte and Milwaukee, the Brahmas and Bighorns, Long Beach Sharks and Sheridan, Stars and Bozeman Ice Dogs, Mason City and New Mexico, Austin and Badlands, New Ulm and Great Falls, Wilmer and New Jersey, Oregon and Texas, Gillette and Rochester, Generals and Granite City, Norwich and Alexandria, El Paso, Danbury, Yellowstone, and Minnesota. Holy smokers. Bay State and St. Louis. Big docket today in Blaine. If you're in Blaine, enjoy your games today. Hope your team does well. Stay out of the injury room. Eric, I'm struggling. I'm half awake.
A couple hours behind you, buddy.
Yeah. And you got your USA Hockey jersey hanging in the background there. Very nice. Very nice. So how was your weekend so far?
Good. It was good. We my youth program was up in Bozeman this weekend, and we had our high school varsity and JV up there. Spent the weekend up there, and then we had the senior Moose team up there. So it was a lot of hockey this weekend.
The Moose sweep?
Yeah, we swept Bozeman this weekend. Yep.
Good. I know that Mike Perkins is in Blaine. A good friend of ours, both of ours, coaches the Ice Dogs in Bozeman. He's done well with that program. It's a very nice arena. It's going to be amazing when it's ever finished.
When it's ever finished, yeah. It's been going on for quite a few years, but yeah, it's going to be it's a cold rink, though, I'll tell you. It's miserably cold.
You know, when you're in Wyoming and Montana and it's December 19th, you expect cold. You know, you're supposed to be really cold there. So, is it as bad as the rink in Kenai that was open on one side? Remember that one?
No, yeah, we practiced there in the North American League more than once, and no, that's definitely a lot colder.
How about Fairbanks outside the Big Dipper walking in when it's minus 40 and you run from the car to the building? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the good old days.
No, well, I remember when I was coaching in Fresno, we actually played the last outdoor game against the Ice Dogs. Prof used to host that outdoor game, and we played the last game they ever had in that rink right behind the Dipper. And it was I believe it was in the 40s below,
Yeah,
and they were pumping hot air into the dugout locker rooms, and it was a special treat. It was sunny, but it was extremely cold.
that's life in Fairbanks. I remember going up there and tossing what was left of a cup of coffee out the window, and it shattered on the ground when it hit the ground. That's nice and cold. Let's get right into the North American Hockey Report for today. Um, the league goes dark for the next 9 days after today's Rebels hat tricks game in Danbury. Prospects and team staff scatter home for the quick holiday break. The Lone Star Brahmas are doing their best impression of the old Texas Tornado and dominating the South Division. Meanwhile, the hat tricks look kind of out of place, like a walrus wearing a bikini. You have to be happy with how Lone Star's done this year. Wildfun is 21-2-1-3 on the season. They've only lost 2 games all year. One was to New Mexico one was to Oklahoma in Oklahoma City. The other one at the Showcase. Pretty impressive so far.
Yeah, Danny Wildfong's got his team going. I mean, to be going into Christmas break with only 2 losses in regulation is impressive, and you don't see that a lot. The league has gotten better over the last 20 years that I've been around it, and to see that type of score right there from a program like that, that's great, and especially in the South. The South has always been one of those divisions, always been pretty prominent. So good for Coach Wildfong and his Brahmas.
The South is deep again. Corpus and El Paso are not doing as well as they would like, but the rest of the teams are very competitive across the board. Number 2, Oklahoma Warriors, speaking of the South, 25-0-1. Took care of business over the weekend when they visited Odessa, beat the Jackalopes 5-2 and 3-2. They lost all 3 of their games so far this year that they played at the NITEX, and they play there again on New Year's Eve. That could be a surprise game.
Yeah, Garrett Roth is. I mean, what they're doing in Oklahoma is unbelievable. I mean, it's great. I'm really happy for Garrett. I've known Garrett for many years, so to have that team going 25-0-1 is great. And if they're only 3 of their 5 losses are to the Brahmas, I mean, there's only a matter of time before they're going to get one back. So, good luck to Coach Roth and the Warriors on New Year's. I think you might see something happen there in their favor.
Very good. Number 3, Maryland Blackbirds are at 22-7-3. Clint Mylock's team, just 3 wins in the last 10 games, most of that in December. Hasn't been a good month for them. They visit the Northeast, come to town on January 6-7. They split their weekend at Maine, Saturday or Friday and Saturday. What's going on there? Is it just mid-season blues?
Just as well as I do, Steve, these things happen all the time to good teams. It's a mid-season swing. It's a stretch. You may have injuries, maybe even some, kids missing home, morale, whatever it is. But, to be 22-7, have less than 10 losses on the season, I would think that it's probably just a small lull. It's just interesting as we talk the second time. I appreciate you having me on, but the second time we've talked in Maryland, I remember Maryland the first year they came in the league. They struggled. And now they're one of the top 5 teams in the North American League, which is awesome. So I wouldn't put a lot of stock into what's going on over the last 10 games. Second season will start here after January and 1st, and I'm sure Coach Mylock will get them back on track.
Those guys were certainly dialed in earlier in the season. I have a lot of respect for Clint and what he's done in that program. I feel he will get those guys back. And we'll see what happens. Number 4, Austin Bruins are 18-5-2-3. They played this last weekend against Aberdeen. Hell of a series. They get back together after the season. Both teams look dynamic, but the coaching duel was epic. The Bruins faced North Iowa December 30-31. That series looked like it could be the Central Division final later on.
Yeah, I mean, Howie's done a great job there. I mean, that's just what a great story there with Austin. Old USHL market. he does good every year. I mean, he does a great job. He's a good players coach. Spends the time getting these kids prepared for college and after. So I would see I would put my money a little bit on Austin over North Iowa at this point, just knowing Steve the way I know him and how he prepares his team. So another great guy that's done a good job in the game, and he continues to do a better job every day. So excited for him.
Number 5, the Minnesota Wilderness from your neck of the woods, 18-10, 1-2. Brett Skinner's done a really good job so far this season. He's kind of been in the shadow of controversy there with Dave Boyd and the stuff with Coach Phillips that was there. But you have to appreciate what the job he's done so far this year.
Yeah, I don't know Brett that well. I mean, I know him a little bit, but he walked into a situation this year that's it's tough to overcome. And yeah, you're right. My neck of the woods, northern Minnesota, and everything is a little more magnified and polarized in small communities like that. So what Skinner's done and what the program has done to kind of weather that storm and take a different direction and really come out strong. That's great. I mean, there's so many good hockey players in that northern part of Minnesota that end up, and I haven't looked at their roster. I'm assuming he's got a few kids from Hermantown and some of the surrounding communities, but it's exciting to see those guys keep forging ahead, and hopefully they'll get it done at the end of the year.
Skinner has a good staff. Kyle Brody moved over from Wenatchee. You have to like what Skinner's been able to do, and it's kept the controversy at bay. They've been through a lot of players so far this year, but not as many as some teams. So let's see what happens there. Number 6, Northeast Generals, 17-10, 3-0. They struggled to get past Danbury, 2-1 overtime game and 2-1 in regulation while picking up a pair of wins. Eric, I challenge you. Go watch 10 minutes of either one of those two games. And you're going to be wondering if that was really North American Hockey League action or not. It was ugly.
Again, it's a mid-season, doldrums. I mean, it happens to everybody. But yeah, I'll definitely jump on and take a look. I've spent a little more time watching some games this year. I've got a few players I'm working with in the NA3 and the NA, and so I've watched more games this year than I have in the past. But yeah, I don't know Coach Erickson at all, but it's the Danbury program is I think just one of those programs. They're in their early stages of their living out there as a North American team. There's a ton of hockey there in Danbury with the pro team and the NA and the NA3 and just a lot going on. So hopefully they pick it up. Hopefully they turn things around. But the Generals, I mean, still not a bad run so far. Above 500 going into Christmas break. It's kind of where you want to be right now. I mean, you'd always be nice to be at the top, but if you're in the middle, it makes the second half of the season pretty exciting.
Number 7, New Jersey Titans, 18-11-1-1. Started the season slow. They got a sweep at Johnstown. They're 11-0-1-1 in their last 13 games. This is one hot hockey team.
Yeah, and Craig knows what it takes to win. I mean, they won the Robbie. That program is really come a long way. Steve, I remember the New Jersey Titans when they were a junior B team. Coached against them in the old Silver Cup national tournament more than once, and to see that happening out on the East and see how they're doing this great 11-0-1-1 in the last 13 is pretty big. It's a big accomplishment. So yeah, I would see New Jersey start to climb your list and be in the top 5 team probably mid January for sure.
It wasn't long ago they were at the bottom of the list. I mean, they started out slow with the showcase, did a fantastic job as of late. And that's what you want to do. You want to elevate and get better and better as the season progresses, and the Titans are certainly doing that. Number 8, another good story. Aberdeen Wings are 15-9-1-2. They split the weekend series at Austin. St. Cloud comes to town for New Year's Eve. 8-2-0-0 in the last 10 games. Scott Langer has that team singing.
Not surprised. Not surprised. Smacky's a great coach. He's a journeyman. He's been in this game a long time, and he's been all over, and he's done a great job everywhere he's been. And so it doesn't surprise me that he's got this team in Aberdeen kind of firing on all cylinders right before you go into break. He knows what it takes to win too. Another coach is still in the North American League is one of Robbie. Not many of them in that league right now that have stayed in the league after they've won. So I would say that, knowing Scott the way I know him, that team will be a contender at the end of the year, no question.
Absolutely. Here's one you like. Number 9, Fairbanks Ice Dogs. 17, 11, 3-0. Dave Allison's Ice Dog plays much better on the road than they do at home. They swept Janesville. Here's what's weird. Fairbanks is 11-4, 1-0 on the road this year and sub 500 at 6-7, 2-0 at home. That's strange. I never remember in my life a Fairbanks team having trouble getting wins at the Big Dipper.
Yeah, that's in all the years since you helped put that team together back in the Jack Tragus and Hal Burton days with Prof. That might be the toughest barn to ever play in as a coach. There's no question. The atmosphere is awesome, but I'm sure the fans at the Dipper are probably getting a little uneasy. But Dave Allison's a guy that's been all the way to the top. I mean, he's a National Hockey League guy all the way down. I've known Dave for a long time when he was coaching Fort Francis with the Thunder. Coached against him in the old SIJHL, and he knows what it takes to win too. So, it's just that is a little bit perplexing to see them not winning at home at the Dip, because, like you said, that's arguably the best in the North American Hockey League. Might be the best atmosphere to play in, even as an opponent. So, and full confidence in a guy like Dave Allison to get him back on track. But that one's interesting. It's an interesting little sidebar for sure.
They haven't won a series since February of last year. It wasn't long after Allison got there. I think it was when did Trevor leave and go to Alaska Anchorage? I think it was in December or November.
Yeah, it was mid-season. Yeah, it was mid-season when Trev left.
And, it doesn't make any sense for them to struggle at home. I'm sure it's something that's on everybody's mind back home in Fairbanks. Let's see what happens when they come back. Maybe they'll get better. They do visit Chippewa on New Year's Eve, and then they go to Springfield January 6th, 7th. So we'll see what happens. Another Alaska team, Kenai River Brown Bears, are 18-12, 1-0. They play with a short bench this weekend while dismantling Chippewa in a 2-game sweep. Brown Bears visit the Wendigo when they get back from the Santa Claus festivities. Have to be happy with how Kenai River has played. I'm not particularly happy with Taylor Shaw. From what I saw in the third period of that fiasco last week in Anchorage, it was clear what was going on. They got swamped. 6 power play goals for the Wolverines in the third period. But what I didn't like was seeing players targeting the Wolverines players. Those days are gone, right? Why is that still happening? And as a result, Brown Bears played short against Chippewa. Didn't seem to affect them very much.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. Those days are gone. I mean, I think that circuit, you've got Anchorage, you've got Fairbanks, you've got Kenai. It's like the old minor league circuit. When you're close in proximity, you play so many games against each other, and there's probably so many cross relationships between those Alaska kids. I can only imagine the bad blood. I've seen some clips online, even of the Dogs and the Wolverines with Allison and some type of horn or something like that. So I think that you just, Alaska's a different place. It's a different world up there. And, I'm assuming this probably just gets a little tumultuous, but Taylor Shaw's a young coach and I'm not condoning what he's doing, but I'm probably he'll learn. I didn't see the game, but for the Brown Bears to even be 18-12-1 at midseason, that's been the toughest place and probably the toughest market to consistently have success for a number of reasons. And it's good to see them. I know that I don't know Taylor, but I know the assistant coach Jake Leitner. I had the privilege and pleasure of coaching him here with the senior team in the Moose. Minnesota kid from Bemidji. He works really hard. It's nice to see Kenai in the upper third of the North American Hockey League for sure.
I always consider that place one of my homes. I love Alaska, South Central Alaska. I spent a lot of time on the peninsula with the Aces, with the Arctic Ice, with the old Hellfighters. I kind of lived in between in Girdwood. It's an experience at a time of my life I'll never forget. I have a lot of friends still on the peninsula. I mean, a lot of clients that come out of there. Alaska will always be my home. It kind of hurts when I see some of the antics at Kenai. I think if that market ever won a Robertson Cup, that it'd be worth $1 million a year to them in support. And they're getting a lot of support now, and that's good. But what I saw in Anchorage last week was disturbing. I hope we don't see it again. Number 11, Amarillo Wranglers, 14-9, 2-1. Wranglers appear to have their moxie back after the home sweep of El Paso. Let's see, New Mexico and Oklahoma come back to the bullpen on back-to-back weekends to starting New Year's Eve. Wranglers are a hard read. Harry Mahood's a hard read. They get hot and cold. They seem like they're on a roll, then they get disengaged. What causes that kind of turmoil?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not quite sure. Hoodie, another guy's been around for a long time, longer than I have probably. He's been everywhere, and I'm surprised to see him back in the game. Happy for him, but I think maybe probably just kids finding their way, the coach finding the way. I think it goes back to Dave Allison. Those two guys, they know the game. It's not that they don't know the game; they understand the game. They coach at the highest levels, but players today sometimes maybe just a little different, and it takes time for guys like Harry Mahood, who is coached a certain way his entire life, and now he's got to adjust and adapt and maybe coach a different way. So, again, one of those guys that knows what it takes to win, understands what he's going to have to do, and having hot and cold, at least there's some peaks and valleys, and not just cellar time. So I think they're still in the right spot. They're in striking distance. They got less than 10 losses in regulation. That's still pretty impressive for this time, especially in the South.
South Division is very challenging for sure. There are no nights off. Even against Corpus Christi or El Paso, you're going to get snake bitten if you don't go in there fully prepared. Amarillo has every advantage of success. They have their own practice facility, which is very nice. The arena and the support in that town is very strong. For a hockey player to go from Minnesota or California or Boston and end up in Amarillo, that can be culture shock. Amarillo is not a hockey town, it's a cow town. And I think sometimes being up in the panhandle of Texas, the middle of nowhere, that might wear thin on the kids after a while.
Yeah, one of my former college and high school best friends, his son plays for Amarillo, Clafton. Just committed, I think, to Air Force. And Northern Minnesota kid, Grand Rapids kid. I can only imagine how he's adjusting down there. And goalies are more resilient anyways, but they're just a different breed. But yeah, I can't imagine. I coach in that building. That the atmosphere in that building is really hostile, and in a good way. And old Central Hockey League market. They had pro hockey there for I don't know how many years. More than I would, but for them to have their own practice facility and now new ownership and a new direction, that's awesome. It's good to see that they're sticking around. It's good to see that their programs continue to thrive.
Very good. Number 12, a rather new team, New Mexico Ice Wolves, 16-10, 1-1. Picked up a shootout win at Lone Star Saturday. That's rare. Got a split for the weekend. They visit Amarillo on December 30-31. If they have a good result at Amarillo, it would close out a rather disappointing month of December for that team. Phil Fox gets it. He's been doing well from the beginning there in Albuquerque.
Yeah, interesting enough. Yeah, like he's done a great job there. And Foxy's, he's got that team playing, and the kids are getting college commitments. He's doing a phenomenal job, and for 2 years in a row now that I've been paying attention. So again, another one of those teams that you can't count out. Again, right where they need to be, a little above 500 going into the Christmas break, and again, another South Division team. Like I said, that South prepares you for playing some of the other parts of the North American Hockey League. So And it looks like they're getting a little more support in their community with fans, getting more support, and getting some traction there, which was tough. I remember when I was in Fresno, we had oh geez, the gentleman that owned the Jamestown Rebels. I'm drawing a blank.
And Dennis.
Ken Dennis put the New Mexico Ice Wolves or New Mexico Mustangs
I think
down at that center, 45 minutes out of Albuquerque, and beautiful facility. Yeah, Bill McCall, former NHLers, coaching college right now. He was a coach down there, and they couldn't draw more than a couple hundred people to those games. And I thought New Mexico was going to be, completely a market that would never be able to be revived. And Phil Fox and his ownership has done a great job down there. So that's phenomenal.
number 13, Maine Nordiques are 14-10-1-1. Shocked the world, earned 3 points in the home series with Maryland. They do host Danbury on New Year's Eve. That's going to be interesting. Not really a big Pinch fan at all. Had a little bit of a run-in with him over the offseason. You have to understand that the Nordiques playing a division where, half their games are pretty easy. You have to face some of the weaker teams. But it's interesting that they did get 3 points from that series with Maryland.
Yeah, to take off a top team, that's impressive. And again, that maybe outside of Danbury, that division is pretty tough too. I mean, Danbury's finding their way, but you've got Maine, you've got Maryland, you've got the Tomahawks, there's some good teams in that division out there. So, and Maine's been, again, another team above 500. They're right in striking distance. So, and I don't know Matt at all. I have never met him, but like I said, it should be interesting. Like you said, Danbury, that's the only bad thing about Danbury being at the bottom and not having a good year. They can be a spoiler for any one of those top teams because kids go in, coaches go in, a little, less prepared and maybe not as, ready to play a team and automatically assuming they're just going to walk all over them. And next thing you know, they get stung.
Number 14, Shreveport Mudbugs, 14-10-2-2. No other team has more wins in the last 10 games than Shreveport, 8-2-0-0. Jason Campbell, great hockey coach. They got a home sweep of the Ice Rays. They go back to Corpus Christi on December 29th and 30th. I think these guys are set up for a nice second half of the season.
Yeah, again, another program that knows what it takes, and from Scotty Muscat all the way down. I mean, there's no question they'll be fine. Like you said, I sound like a broken record, but above 500 at Christmas break. It's where you want to be right now. And Shreveport, to talk about it, a great market. I haven't been there to a North American game, but I've been to a couple of Central League games there years and years ago. What a great building. What a great area. And the fans that's just a great atmosphere for those players to play in. And Campbell knows what it takes too. I mean, again, there's some great coaches in the North American hockey. There's very, very few guys that don't get to stay there if they're good. But I would see Shreveport decide, making a move, after the mid-season mark and really kind of making some noise down the stretch.
Number 15, Chippewa Steel, 16-12-1-1. After being swept by Kenai River over the weekend. Interesting. I was kind of surprised by that result. They get 2 weeks off, and they will host Ice Dogs on New Year's Eve. Chippewa was looking really strong beforehand, and it's surprising how well Kenai did over the weekend at Chippewa. Getting that sweep really took some air out of Chippewa's tent a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah, again, they're pretty comparable teams, right? They probably traded punches all year. And 16-12-1-1 is nothing to be embarrassed about. But to get swept in your own building, that makes it tough, right? You don't want to do that. So I'm sure Casey will get them back on track. But they've done well. The Chippewa Steel have done extremely well this year. Again, another team that's right there. The league looks so much stronger this year than it has in some of the years past. That's for sure.
Very few bottom feeders in the league, period. Janesville, 13-10-3-4. Here's something unusual. Joe Dibble and the Jets have just 2 wins in the last 10 games after being swept at home by Fairbanks. You go to the holiday break. The next 3 games are all against Anchorage at home after the break here. That's not going to be easy. Janesville struggling this time of year is unusual. Joe Dibble and the Jets generally have a very young team. It's probably that time of the year when those young kids start to struggle. I expect they will find themselves in January. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they find themselves in January. And I also think, Dibs does a good job finding those 1 or 2 players right at the deadline. USHL drops that are going to make a difference for him. And he's got his hands on a number of different levers there. So there's a lot going on in Janesville with the possibility of a new facility and stuff like that. And you're right. His rosters, I haven't looked at his roster. His rosters are usually pretty young. It's about that time of year, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Some of those kids get homesick and they start to question what they're doing. But Dibs will get him back on track. And like I said, he's good for 1 or 2 pickups down the stretch, where maybe a move with one of those younger players to a USHL team to get back maybe a couple 20 bombs. I would venture to guess Janesville will be just fine.
Dibble always has his hands on the lever of AAA players that could decide at the Christmas break here, do I want to stay on my AAA team or go ahead and move up to the North American Hockey League? And some of those higher end players are 16, 17 years old, but it's not unusual for Dibble to grab a couple of those kids to make a difference later on.
Yeah, there's no question, and he couldn't be better located centrally. I mean, he's got all those AAA teams from Chicago, Wisconsin. It's like you said, he's always got a plan in place for sure. So, I would expect to see Janesville move up on your list.
Number 17, the Anchorage Wolverines are 13, 11, 5-1. They split their pre-Christmas weekend at Wisconsin with the Wendigo. They have some work to do before they come back after Christmas. They visit Janesville December 30, 31, and January 4th. Anchorage's biggest problem this year has been inconsistency between the pipes. They've been looking for the answer. They think they found the answer. Then the answer isn't as good as they thought they were. They're loyal to guys from last year, and I get that. I love that team. I love that organization. I like what they've been able to do so far. But I think Trupp is doing the best job he can with what he has, and Keith Morris is trying to put the right mix into the soup can there.
Well, yeah, losing Aches after the year. I mean, Trupp's a young coach, so he's doing the same thing every young coach does at that level. There's a ton of pressure on those guys, and he's probably doing the best he can. And you bring up a good point. There's a lot of loyalty. The team did really well last year, and there's probably maybe a goalie or a couple players that played on that team, so they're gonna stick with it. And I give them credit for doing that. It's easy just to trade away some players that maybe don't fit the mold at the time. But again, Coach Trupp, young kid, he's going to do a great job. He's just going to have to find his way. But goaltending is a big part of it, especially at that level, especially at that league. Goaltending is a big deal. It's an overage league, if you will, with a lot of 19 and 20-year-olds that got 4 and 5 years of junior experience. So if your goaltending is not solid, it adds for a kind of a struggle every year. But like I said, one of those teams and one of the coaching staffs, and Keith is GM and director of operations. I mean, those guys will find their way. But again, you're playing against Fairbanks Ice Dogs and the Kenai River Brown Bears pretty consistently, and so it's in Alaska in the wintertime is tough. I don't need to tell you. It's got to get out of there once in a while. That's why they call everything else the lower 48, right?
I love that place. Number 18, North Iowa Bulls, 13, 12, 2-0. They were set to play 3 games over the weekend with St. Cloud. Unfortunately, the game on Thursday and Friday was canceled due to a snowstorm. They weren't able to get back and forth. They did get Saturday's game set, losing 4-3 at St. Cloud. The Bulls have a New Year's Eve weekend date with Austin. The Bulls being 1 game over 500 at the midseason point isn't bad in the Central Division. There seems to be a bit of a cultural issue in North Iowa. I don't know what's going on there. They started out strong. They kind of fizzled a little bit, done a little bit better in December. And again, it's back and forth within that division. Again, there's no nights off at all.
Yeah, and unfortunately, North Iowa, when they first came back into the league, they were an NA3 team. And I mean, geez, they lost probably less than 10 games in 4 years.
Yeah.
So you say something culturally. I mean, that's an old USHL market. They've had North American teams there before with the old North Iowa Outlaws and USHL Huskies. And, the bar was set pretty high. And, Todd Sandin's the same coach. So there's probably a little bit of pressure there being, a 500 team. And after, being a dominant NA3 team for I don't know how many years they were there, 3 or 4 years. So yeah, there might be some cultural issues, and it may start at the very top. I'm not quite sure, but again, Todd's been around the game. He understands. He's adjusted and adapted to this style of game today. So, and that, like you said, that Central Division is pretty tough too. So. I wouldn't be too surprised to see them kind of, inch their way. But like you said, I haven't done a lot of research on them. But the cultural thing you bring up probably has a lot to do with the fact that the bar was set so high for so many years.
Wisconsin Wendigo started out slow. They now are above 500, 14-13, 1-1. They split their weekend series with Anchorage. They are the Midwest Division's hottest team with a 7-2, 0-1 record in the last 10 games. Kenai River visits them on New Year's Eve weekend. You have to be surprised with Wisconsin. This coach has done a good job. I think they're like 0-4 or 1-4 to start the season. They bounced back from that. They've been playing good hockey. It's a new building for them. We have to be excited about Wisconsin hockey right now.
Yeah, and I think this is Blake. I'm assuming this is Blake's first year in the North American League as a head coach. So to have that kind of momentum right now, especially in those markets in the Midwest, those are tough markets because there's a ton of hockey, right? There's so much hockey in that Midwest, Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's tough to put a North American Hockey League team together and attract some of the best players when some of the players are heading to the USHL or, God forbid, heading right to the NCAA Division III. So no, it seems like they're doing really well. Don't know a lot about them, but it seems like they're right there again, 500, above 500, right in striking distance for sure.
Number 20, Minnesota Montoros, 13-13, 1-1. If you were to tell me earlier in the season at the beginning that this team would be right at 500 at Christmas, I wouldn't believe you. But it is the Central Division, and every team is a contender. Right now, today, any one of those teams can be in the playoffs at the end of the year. They're all that close. The Winter Storm kind of caused some trouble. They didn't get their home game against Bismarck on Friday. They managed to bust to Bismarck for Saturday. Bismarck scored 5 goals before Minot came back in the third period and scored 3. It wasn't that close of a game earlier on. Minot did battle back. They face Bismarck again on New Year's Eve. When your schedule gets tossed a curveball and you're dealing with a blizzard, North Dakota, you expect that. Your game gets canceled one night. You have to manage to get on the bus the next day and still make it over to Bismarck. I think that's going to wear on the team.
Oh, there's no question. I think sometimes we all forget, as good a hockey players these kids are, they're still kids. And disruption in any type of schedule is going to hurt even the coaching staff. It just is what it is. It's hard to keep everybody mentally prepared. And I know when I was coach, I go back to when I was coaching in Fresno, my last road trip in Fresno, before we moved the team to Wenatchee, was 43 days. 43 days on the road. And it was the longest swing in North American history. I don't think it'll ever be duplicated. And it was tough to get those guys excited. It was tough to get those guys prepared. Those are long road trips, obviously a little more extreme than this, but even just down the road. But Cody's been around. He's a good coach. He knows what, he's going to get his team back on track. But Minot is, Marty Murray did a great job there, leaving a really good culture and a really good system there. And Cody worked with him. So I'm not concerned about them not turning it on in the second half for sure.
St. Cloud, number 21, is 12-12, 1-1 at 500. Again, Mother Nature gave Corey Millen and the Norsemen a few extra days off on Thursday and Friday. They did get their game on Saturday with the win. it's interesting to find themselves at 500 at the break. This team actually played very well during the showcase. I think they beat the national team as well. But they've been rattled with injuries, a lot of very rough games. Millen's a very passionate coach, and things happen. So he's been dealing with a few suspensions along the way. But overall, the team is back to square one going into the second half of the season. I expect very good things out of this organization.
Yeah, I can't say enough about Corey Millen. I mean, the guy's not only battle tested as a player, but as a coach, he's successful everywhere he goes. He understands how to prepare these players. So you're right. To be 500 right now, Corey's not worried. I would think that he's not worried. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't think he's concerned and worried. He's gonna for sure make a playoff run. And again, like you said, he'll have that team ready to go. And when you get into situations, sometimes it seems like it's just one after another. You lose an injury, maybe a weather situation, another injury, a suspension. It happens. It's a long season, 60 plus games for these 17 to 20-year-old young men, and these programs is tough. So, I know Corey well, and there's no question in my mind that team will be one of the top teams at the end.
That's par for course for them. Number 22, Bismarck Bobcats, 11-12, 2-1, a game under 500. Again, they got the win on Saturday over Montoros. Bobcats jumped out to a 5-0 lead before the Toros came back and scored 3 goals again. The same two teams will battle again home and home on December 30th and New Year's Eve. That Bismarck-Minot rivalry is huge. The Bismarck-Aberdeen rivalry is huge. I don't know if Minot has overtaken Aberdeen as a primary rival for Bismarck or not, but anytime any of those 3 teams get together, it's going to be a war.
Yeah, that North Dakota corridors. I mean, what a great little area, though. You got Aberdeen, Minot, and Bismarck, and Bismarck is the older brother on the block. They've been around for many, many years. The Old America Frontier League and America West, and so it's. But what a great little circuit right there. And again, that Central Division is tough. I mean, it's again one of those things where there's usually relatively never a punching bag in that division. So, if you take a look at most of your teams that are in Central Division, they're all just a few games above 500. No one's walking away with it other than Austin. So, again, Lane's been around forever too. Again, great coaching, great atmosphere, good ownership. I mean, it's just one thing after another. So, don't put too much emphasis on midseason.
Number 23, Springfield Blues, one of the stops on your resume. 13-15, 0-0. Tyler Renee's Blues ice division leading Wilderness 5-2 on Saturday, salvaging a home split. They are currently in last place in that division, but they're only 8 points behind Chippewa for the 4th spot. And I think top to bottom, there are only 13 points separating the Wilderness from the Blues. Anything can happen in that Midwest division.
Yeah, no, again, one of my stops. I love the Nelly. A lot of history in the Nelson Center there in Springfield, Illinois. So Tyler does a good job. Again, great leadership. Again, it's a Central Division. They're all right in that 500 mark right there. So, and it seems like Springfield's getting a little more momentum. They have some recent college commitments, and again, like I said, sound like a broken record, but it's anybody's game in that division, really. I mean, it's who's going to turn on at the very end. I said it in the last cast with you, is nobody hands out trophies in December. So it's a long season.
Great quote, Eric. That was repeated many times. You talked about Eric's great quote. That was probably one of the best ones you ever tossed out there.
Well, it's you prepare for the end of the season, and as long as you make playoffs, and you got to be good in February and March, so Tyler will do a good job with that group and that team, and the Blues. Talk about a storied franchise. I believe, don't they go down in the North American League as the oldest franchise in the North American League still?
I mean,
yeah, they've been around for a long time. Coached by a lot of good coaches in that Springfield Junior Blues program, that's for sure.
Remember, Tony Curtelli came out of there. Dibble came out of there. Some guy named Eric Ballard was coaching there. A lot of good guys there. Yeah. Number 24, Johnstown Tomahawks, 2 games under 500 at 12-14, 2-0. Swept at home by New Jersey over the weekend. They battled the Titans 4-3 on Saturday, kept it close. The Generals returned to the War Memorial on December 30, 31. Did you guys play at Johnstown when you were in Fresno?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a really good memory of mine in Johnstown. So, and I'm not going to say it on air, that's for sure. But we had some personnel issues, and go down in the history books as probably one of the best memories I ever had. I had to let an assistant coach go, and we were playing Johnstown, and I actually removed him from my staff in Joe McGrath's office upstairs. That turned out to be so in the movie Slapshot, Joe McGrath's office in the movie is now the owner's suite.
Nice.
And, I let my assistant coach go in Joe McGrath's office that day. So yeah, spent some time at the War Memorial, great facility, and arguably go down in the record books as one of my fondest memories.
Did you guys stay at the Holiday Inn there in Johnstown?
We stayed at the Holiday Inn, the famous Holiday Inn, right across the street there, and they've got a little museum inside the building with all the Slapshot video or photos in the movie. And you grew up in my era; that was a big part of my youth and growing up. When I was in college, but went and saw the dog. The statue of the dog that saved Charlestown from the 39 flood or whatever it was in the movie. So I sat down in the downtown square where Ned Braden was, hitting on all the girls across the way. So yeah, it's a really unique town. I really enjoyed it there. But Mike Letizia was the assistant coach there under Jason Spence at the time, and Letizia was running the pro shop there. And I think I talked on the last podcast about it. He's done a good job there. He really has. So, like I said, it's they'll bounce back, and if they don't bounce back this year, it's great, very good ownership and a great atmosphere. I mean, that's a unique place to play, and probably a unique place to coach for sure.
Absolutely, it's Rick Boyd helped put that team together. I was working with him to get that done. We ended up moving the Alaska Avalanche from Wasilla to Johnstown to get that team going, and it was interesting. At the beginning, they started out very strong, but that fan support really hasn't wavered from the beginning till now, and I think they've really embraced this level of hockey. It's certainly the gem of all the East Division as far as support is concerned. So very happy with Johnstown's progress to date. They keep on trucking along. Number 25, Odessa Jackalopes at 12-14-0-1. Scott Dewar and the Jackalopes looked strong in Saturday's 3-2 loss to Oklahoma. They have a lot of things to think about over the next few weeks. Do they make some moves, make a run for the playoffs, or start rebuilding for next year? Maybe trade off. They have 11 2002s on the roster. Is it time to put the towel in and start developing next year's team? What do you think, Eric?
I think that South Division, you got to stay with more 20-year-olds. It's tough to win with, those young players may be really talented and maybe on their way to NCAA Division I college commitments, but you're 20-year-olds in that South Division, they're like gold. And I think you have to have a really good core, because if you don't, the next team down the road does. And North American Hockey League it's developing some of the better, older talent. And it's great. But yeah, I think if he's got a handful of 2002s, 11 of them, ooh, boy, I tell you, they could be a lot to hang on to next year. I mean, I think that's a huge opportunity for Scott to really come out of the gate. What's that?
Those 11 kids all age out.
Oh, age out. I'm sorry. 2002 is my fault. Yeah. That's my fault. Boy, have that many 2002s and not be winning.
In that division, it seems like it would almost, and for them and Corpus, probably El Paso, it's probably time to bring in more 18 and 19-year-olds, give them a heavy game count second half of the year, so they're ready for next year if you can hold on to those kids. Scott's a great coach.
Yeah, player availability is a big one. I was looking at wrong. Anyways, doesn't matter. 2002s are there in their final year. Boy, I tell you, it's tough. A lot of players aren't available right now. They're on AAA rosters, like you said, or high school rosters. A lot of kids probably aren't ready to leave, but he looks like he might have to ride the storm out with some older players this year and start to rebuild. But again, South Division team, tough. It's a tough division for sure.
Number 26, Philadelphia Rebels, 10-15, 1-1. Justin Hale and the Rebels should be more than ready for today's little trip to Danbury. I heard a rumor that they're going to dress in line of 14 AAA players for today's game. Probably not true. They got 6 wins in the last 10 games, so we'll see what happens when they play the Rebels this afternoon. I know it's not nice to say something like that, but Philadelphia is playing better hockey than Danbury. Justin Hale has done a better job in the last 10 games, so they're starting to pick up some progress, a little momentum. This was Joe Coombs' team, and to see the team not do as well as they should be, Justin Hale's a new coach. He should know the level of play better than it is so far. We talked about that a few weeks ago. I think Philadelphia will do better second half of the year and come back to 500. What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know how many kids actually stayed on that roster when they transferred the team and ownership to another city, but knowing Joe Coombs the way I know him, I mean, he's a good coach, and he's a player's coach, and he's extremely demanding. I mean, he wants his kids to play a certain way and play tough like he did. He was a tough player himself. So, different coaching style between Hale and Coombs. So I'm not quite sure how many kids transferred over, but if there was some kids transferred over with, some non-USA sanctioned leagues, they probably lost a few kids to other programs and other leagues. And that takes away a little bit of your core. And to be, 10, 15, 1-1 is a new program in a new area, not knowing, those certain dynamics of, moving parts and roster. It says a lot about Hale and their group. So I hope it's not true that they're going to dress a bunch of Bantams. That would be really tough. It's you got to be a special player to play in that league. That's a North American hockey. It's a really good hockey league. So maybe a publicity stunt or maybe just a bad rumor, but for him to be 10, 15 and 1 is not bad at this point, considering that, for the most part, that's a new team.
El Paso, 10-15, 2-0. Joe Coombs moved from Jamestown to El Paso to join Corey Herman and Corey Phenom, whatever his name is, the general manager there. Unusual to see Joe Coombs have 2 wins in 10 games. They did lose both games at Amarillo. Here's a stat that I'm concerned about. So far this season, 61 different players have appeared on the Rhinos roster. That's got to be a record. They visit Shreveport January 6th to 7th. Look at Eric, 61 players before Christmas. I've never seen such a thing.
Yeah, that's a lot of player turnover. And just from this vantage point, I would say that's got a lot to do with pre-scouting and recruiting before Joe gets there. I would think that he's dealt a hand, and it's probably not the hand that he wanted. I don't know who was scouting for him or who was working with him. I haven't dug into that yet, but I would venture to guess it's probably just not a coach-player fit. But 61 players, I know my 1 year in Fresno, we went through, I think, 20, I would say probably 20 extra players. So we were probably in the high 30s and 40s 1 year. I think it was my second year in Fresno, but 61 stuff. I mean, that's a lot of players. I don't know, but I would think maybe it has a little bit to do with what's going on, away from the hockey rink too, with, El Paso and what's going on at our southern border. I don't know. Maybe some of the families are a little uncomfortable having their kids there. I don't know. That's a lot of player turnover, though. I'll tell you that.
Last year, the Bone brothers were in El Paso. I think those guys are great coaches. One's coaching in Chicago with Tri-City, the Windy City Storm. The other one is coaching in New Mexico. Both those guys are having success. The problem in El Paso last year was the general manager was trying to play NHL 2021 with that roster all year long and moving kids in and out continuously. I think Joe Coombs was supposed to have more control over player personnel this year, and I hope that's still the case. But I don't ever remember Joe Coombs having this much transition through a roster, even for the whole season at 61. To have that by Christmas, someone's playing games there.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Stephen. Joe's a loyal guy. He's a loyal coach, and if the kids are working hard, he's gonna stick with it. But yeah, 61 players, is a ton of player movement. It really is, and without having more consistency, that's going to be tough to continue to win. There's no question. I mean, they're not out. I mean, they're not dead in the water. I mean, 10, 15, they're still right there. Have the big weekend, couple big weekends. Next thing you know, they're 500. But again, going back to the 61 different players, that's a lot of player movement. That's long term ripple effects from that are hard to kind of overcome.
Number 28, Corpus Christi Ice Rays, 6-17, 5-0. Swept at Shreveport over the weekend. They returned to action December 29th and 30th against that same Mudbugs team. We talked about Odessa dropping the 20s and coming back with some higher end 2004s and 5s. It's interesting because Claudier, the coach with Corpus Christi, was coaching the Canadian Provisional Junior Hockey League, whatever that thing was, in Ontario, a non-sanctioned league. And then he played pro in Corpus Christi at one point in his career, but coaching really non-sanctioned hockey in Canada and jumping to the North American Hockey League, that's not comparable. So do you think that plays into why this team is struggling this year?
I'm not as much as I would say that being I mean, I've checked him out. I mean, he's a great player, great coach. I mean, obviously he's going to know the game, but it's about network. I mean, does he have the relationships with the AAA teams and the high school programs and the junior tier 3 teams where he can get players, where he can the prep schools, where he can draft and tender kids that are going to make a difference? And I believe that probably that's where it's at. I think they're still, I don't know, Steve, you know better than I would. They're probably still struggling to find an assistant coach. I don't know if they've hired anybody. Um, that's really the North American Hockey League comes down to, recruitment. You got to find the right players that fit the right mold for the coach, for the program, for the community. And I think really what's going on in Corpus is, I mean, talk about a team with all the resources in the world. I mean, they'd be easy to recruit to Corpus. Be real easy to find a way to get some of the top players in the country there. Great facility. You're right on the ocean. I mean, just a million things away from the rink. But more importantly, they've got a storied history there, being an old pro team. I really truly believe it comes down to recruitment with that program, because if Sylvain had the horses in the stable, I think he'd probably in the South, he'd be right there with everybody else. But it just sounds like they've, whatever it is, maybe it was an ownership transition, maybe it was leadership, direction, and player personnel, whatever it is. I truly believe that's where it kind of lies more than, Sylvain coming down from a non-sanctioned league, but him not having connections and network and relationships with the programs that are going to feed his team. That makes it tough.
Another big problem that Corpus has, and this was a problem in the old Western Professional Hockey League, the Central Hockey League, when teams didn't have practice ice within their city, it becomes a challenge. In Corpus Christi, when there's an event at the American Bank Center, they have to go to Austin or San Antonio or Houston to practice. And that was the case in Topeka. It was the situation in Amarillo before they built their new facility, Wichita Falls. Skated a lot in Lone Star's rink because of the same situation. A lot of these southern markets that had professional hockey had been unable to transition to junior hockey. And the biggest problem has been practice ice. Even the old Texarkana Bandits, who I restarted, we didn't have practice ice, so they had to eventually move to St. Louis. You look what happened in Bossier City. They didn't have practice ice there. Now they have more control over the Barton, where they're playing now at the fairgrounds there in Shreveport. But all these markets, I think it's important in junior hockey that you have a place to practice. Pro teams can get on the bus and move around a little easier, but I think you're seeing now they're putting more emphasis on development at these levels of play in junior hockey. So I think Corpus has to build a practice facility to be competitive in this division. Everybody else now has one. So
Yeah, and if you lose that clubhouse effect, if you lose the opportunity for those players to have identity in a facility, that makes it really tough too. It really does. In today's market with social media and the internet, there's no secrets anymore. Everybody knows, and whether it's true or not, that starts to gain momentum out there. And if you're sitting down with a top prospect and you're talking Corpus Christi Ice Rays, and you're talking another facility that has all those situations with practice ice. Well, I tell you, sometimes it doesn't take much for that player to be swayed. And I know we did it in Fresno. We were in a multi-use facility. The only positive thing is we had Gateway Ice Center across town. That was our practice facility. But it was still tough. That Selland Arena in downtown Fresno was, it hosted a pro team, the Fresno Falcons, for 62 years. And when we took over after the Falcons folded and left in December of '09, we had to roll our locker room in from a storage unit upstairs. It was in pieces and parts, and the pro team had to do that. And you take a look at some of those other programs when we go down to see Tony in Texas, and Frisco. You see what their amenities were, and you see what kind of locker room they had, and the practice facility. And you're 100% right, Stephen. That makes it tough. It makes it really tough. And if you're driving an hour and a half just to get a practice, there's no consistency. There's no ability to have that clubhouse effect that every single junior team has to have. Because I think that's a big part of the rite of passage for these young men, is to be together and have that team unity and team bonding and building. If you don't have that, it makes it tough. Sylvain could have some of the best players on that roster, and he's still going to struggle just because, there's too much fragments in that situation.
That moves us to number 29, the Danbury Hat Tricks, 224, 4-2. And they won their first game of the season over Johnstown. Have just a single win in the last 29 games. This is the time to flush. So why not just dump the whole roster, bring up the NA3HL All-Star team for the rest of the season, and be more competitive? But they play today against Philly. You think Philly will leave a present under the tree and give them a win?
Boy, it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it at all. Philly sees an opportunity for another 2 points in an in-division game. It's a 4-point game, really. That's a tough one. I mean, I know when Kenai first came in the league, they were a little bit at the bottom of the barrel as well. But I can't remember the last time I saw a team 2-24.
Right.
And I know, like I said, in my first year in the North American League with Fresno, I think we were 7 or 18-36 to start the year, to finish the year, something like that. And that was a tough year, less than 20 wins in year one for me. But to be 2-24, and I'll revert back to what I said earlier. There's a ton of hockey going on in Danbury right now with the federal team, the NA, the NA3, and if they don't have a fully stocked staff where they've got 12 to 18 people working in conjunction with each other to really kind of pull the rope in one direction, the product ends up on the ice. And I don't know how their Fed team's doing, but I see their NA3 team's doing okay. So I think that this team is kind of in the middle and maybe doesn't have a ton of just doesn't have enough support. But to go 2-24, oh boy, I tell you, it's really tough for those kids to show up every day and get excited about the game. And that's tough, and it's hard to recover from this.
They did play the Generals tight over the weekend. Both games are 2-1. Took overtime to beat Generals. Needed overtime to beat Danbury on Friday. That probably has more to do with the Generals not really being that good. But they played a team that's middle of the road, 2-1 on both games. It shows that there's a sign of life. But I just don't remember a team having this much bad luck. And it might have more to do with the organization than what we're giving them credit for. Billy McCreary's still there. Matt Voigt, he probably doesn't have the experience to coach an NAHL team. I used to make a lot of jokes about the NA team being able to beat the Federal Prospects Hockey League team. Can't say it this year. But you have to wonder what's going on in Danbury. Why do they even take the NAHL team in the first place out of Wilkes-Barre? Initially, we kind of thought that the NA team would replace the federal team in that building. That would have made sense. But they keep on putting all their emphasis on that pro team and not much attention to the NA team, it's got to be losing $500,000 a year. So I don't know how much longer that's going to be able to sustain that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you make a good point, and the resources too. And I don't know again the ownership dynamics at all, but that is a ton of hockey. And unless the ownership has got deep pockets and everybody's making a really healthy salary to be a part of it, you get what you pay for. That's just, I mean, it's really simple. You get what you pay for, and yeah, it's got to be tough. I can't imagine. It's got to be demoralizing to those kids, and I hopefully it turns around. Hopefully it turns around, and having an NA and an NA3 team in the same building, can only imagine the inner workings there. With the NA3 team being successful, the Fed team being successful, and the NA team not being successful. It's got to be tough to manage. I don't know if I'd want that job.
No, Billy has his hands full there, that's for sure. Eric, thank you for joining the show this morning. We hope that you have an excellent holiday season up there in Jackson Hole. You guys staying at home for Christmas, or you going over to Minnesota?
No, we're staying home. We've got none of the kids are coming in this year. Everybody's doing their own thing. It's we're going to stay right here and enjoy a little downtime. I'm looking forward to it. Matter of fact,
why don't you go outside this morning and take some good pictures of the scenery outside your front door in Jackson Hole and put them into our discussion group. Jackson Hole is going to be a beautiful place in December, especially after all the snow you guys just got. So please share some of the pictures.
You got it.
Hope you have a Merry Christmas. God bless you, my friend.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, brother.
That was Eric Ballard, former coach of North American Hockey League, Western States Hockey League, University of Colorado in college hockey. He was the ACHA representative to USA Hockey for many, many years, and a very long-time friend of mine. We go back almost 30 years. Appreciate him having on the show today. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the show a little bit longer than usual. Enjoy your Monday, get your Christmas shopping done, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. And once again, we hope that you have a